අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 4th of July 2023. Crucial step. Government's proposal on treating domestic debt will clear uncertainties on the impact of the restructuring process on local banking sector, says Fitch Ratings. Strategy implementation. President issues gazette on the conversion of government securities into treasury bonds. Fresh funding. The first tranche of a $500 million loan for budget support received by the Sri Lankan government. New market players. Sinopec and RM Parks to commence fuel distribution in Sri Lanka by end of July.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරමක්.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us tonight on First at 9 and we take you straight to your top stories making headlines tonight. Fitch Ratings says that the government's proposal on treating domestic debt is a crucial step in clearing uncertainties regarding the impact of restructuring processes on the country's banking sector. But Fitch said that complications may arise due to a number of factors. The rating agency further stated that Sri Lankan banks' national ratings, which were downgraded earlier this year, will remain negative until it assesses the impact on the bank's capital once the debt treatment terms are finalized.
According to the government's proposed domestic debt restructuring program, Sri Lanka's provident funds will receive bonds with coupons that will reduce from 12% to 9% over their tenure. Fitch states that bank holdings of Sri Lanka development bonds, which are foreign currency denominated but governed by local law, will be affected, and it expects the international sovereign bonds to be impacted as well. It further states that the banks are expected to agree on the domestic debt restructuring proposal. The proposal also suggests restructuring foreign currency bank loans to the government. The bank's provisioning for international sovereign bonds and local development bonds is expected to mitigate the impact of the debt restructuring. Fitch says that the negative rating on banks will be revised only after assessing the bank's ability to service obligations in local and foreign currency once debt treatment is finalized. However, the rating agency believes that the restructuring of the sovereign's local currency obligations will not affect depositor confidence.
A special Gazette notification on domestic debt optimization was published yesterday, issuing directives to Treasury Secretary and the Public Debt Registrar. The Gazette permits the conversion of or exchanging of any stock or securities issued in Sri Lanka into Treasury bonds. According to the government, the domestic debt plan intends to optimize domestic public debt to ensure debt sustainability and to secure a speedy transition to economic recovery.
As per the Gazette Extraordinary, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, in his capacity as Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies, will authorize the Treasury Secretary and the Registrar of Public Debt to offer to any holder of any stock or securities issued in Sri Lanka the option of converting or exchanging the holding as at 28th of June 2023. It also authorizes the conversion or exchange of any stock or securities issued in Sri Lanka held by holders into treasury bonds. Further, the Gazette authorizes the Treasury Secretary and Registrar of Public Debt to specify the manner in which payment of interest is made and the conditions subject to which such treasury bonds may be converted or exchanged.
ඒකේ පළවෙනි කාරණාව අපි දැන් මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කතා කරපු භාණ්ඩාගාර බිල්පත් භාණ්ඩාගාර බැඳුම් කර බවට පරිවර්තනය කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය බලතල. ඊටත් අමතරව ඒ හුවමාරුව සඳහා යම් වියදමක් යනවා නම් මේ වැඩපිළිවෙලට ඒ වියදම දැරීමට බලය මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්වරයාට සහ මහා බැංකුවේ රාජ්‍ය ණය අංශයේ අධිකාරිවරයාට පැවරිය කිරීම කිව් ප්‍රධාන කාරණා ඉටු කිරීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය බලය පැවරීම තමයි ඒ ගැසට් පත්‍රයෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
Sri Lanka today received the first disbursement worth $250 million from the World Bank's budgetary support loan of $500 million. The loan is provided under the World Bank's country partnership framework and aims to help restore economic and financial sector stability and build a strong foundation for a resilient and inclusive recovery for Sri Lanka. Taking to Twitter, State Minister for Finance Shehant Semasinghe confirmed that the first of the two-tranche disbursement of the World Bank's $500 million loan for budget support was received by authorities today. Last week, the Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to enter into a 2-year agreement with the World Bank to obtain a loan for $500 million in budgetary support. The loan comes under the World Bank's country partnership framework for Sri Lanka, which was approved by its board of directors on the 28th of June, aiming to help restore economic and financial sector stability in the island. In an earlier statement, World Bank Country Director for Sri Lanka, Fariz Haddad Zervos, said that the extent of the crisis in Sri Lanka is unprecedented but offers an opportunity for deep reforms. The World Bank said priority during the 2 years will be given to urgent macro-fiscal and structural reforms, protecting human capital, before moving to long-term development investments that will help promote private sector job creation and boost resilience to climate and external shocks. The $500 million will be used to support reforms that help improve economic governance, enhance growth and competitiveness, and protect the poor and vulnerable. In addition to that, Sri Lanka is also expected to receive a $200 million loan from the World Bank for the Aswasuma Social Safety Net program. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says the first fuel shipment from one of the two companies that reached agreements with the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to enter the local fuel distribution market is expected to reach Sri Lanka by the end of July. Speaking at a media briefing today, the Power and Energy Minister said both China's Sinopec and USA-based RM Parks will commence operations before the end of this month. The Energy Minister also said that government will be reaching an agreement with a suitable investor on the proposed oil refinery in Hambantota before year end.
සයිනපෙක් ආයතනය ෂෙල් ආයතන මේ වන විටත් ගිවිසුම් ගත වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඔස්ට්‍රේලියානු යුනයිටඩ් ආයතනය අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඉදිරි සති කිහිපය තුල ගිවිසුම් ගත වීම සිදු කරයි කියලා. පිරවුම්හල් 150 ලබා දීලා අවසන් ව්‍යාපදිංචි කටයුතු මේ වනවිට කරමින් පවතිනවා. අපිට දැනුවත් කළ තියෙන ආකාරයට ඔවුන්ගේ පළවෙනි ඉන්ධන රැගත් නෞකාව ජුලි මාසයේ අවසාන වන විට ලංකාවට පැමිණීමට තමයි දැනට අපිට දිනවකවන් ලබා දීලා තියෙන්නේ. කඩිනමින් අර බ්‍රෑන්ඩින් කරන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. පිරවුම්හල් වල සිනොපෙක් කියන ලාංඡනය ඒ කියන කටයුතු වලට කාලයක් ගත වෙනවා. නමුත් ඔවුන්ගේ මෙහෙයුම් කටයුතු ආරම්භ වෙනවා මේ මාසයේ අවසාන වන විට. අපි හඳුනාගෙන තිබෙනවා නව පිරිපහදුවක් අපිට අත්‍යවශ්‍යයි කියලා හම්බන්තොට දිස්ත්‍රික්කය අපි කේන්ද්‍ර කරගෙන විශේෂයෙන්ම හඳුනාගත්තා සමාගම් දෙකක් පමණයි ඒ ආයෝජනය කිරීම සඳහා සුදුසු තාක්ෂණය සහ ආයෝජන හැකියාව තියෙන්නේ කියලා. දින 45කින් පස්සේ සුදුසුම ආයෝජකයා තෝරගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම චීනයේ සිනොපෙක් ආයතනයටත් සිංගප්පූරුවේ කේන්ද්‍ර කරගෙන පිරිපහදු කටයුතු සිදු කරන විටෝල් ආයතනයටත් ඒ RFP ඩොකියුමන්ට් දෙක ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා අවසරය ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. එනොත් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේ වසර අවසානයේ ගිවිසුම් ගත වෙන්න නව පිරිපහදුවක් සඳහා. No, there were 7 bidders. So once the evaluation committee went through the initial evaluation, they have seen that only 2 proposals can be implemented according to the technical and the financial capabilities. So you have to initially pass through a certain criteria to be able to get a RFP. So those 2 companies have been issued the RFP. Once they give back the RFP, then they will evaluate which company will be awarded. No, we haven't restricted that. That is up to the company to decide. We have only given a minimum amount. So the minimum investment, if at all, it should be about $4 billion. No, we haven't restricted that. That is up to the company to decide. We have only given a minimum amount. So the minimum investment, if at all, it should be about $4 billion.
Minister, you talk about recovering the losses through a tax 50 rupees per litre. How much so far you have recovered?
Now, I don't know the exact amount that has been recovered. That is with the Treasury. What we have to recover is $700 million that is due to the Indian credit line, what we have purchased as fuel. And there is another recovery process for the Iranian supplies that we have obtained early part of 2000, which amounts to roughly about $300 million. So the Treasury will recover that money through the tax scheme, which we will think will probably be implemented for the next 12 months also to recover the entire amount. Once the Treasury says the money is recovered, then we can relax on the taxes.
Meanwhile, the Power Minister highlighted that government has provided a significant relief via the electricity tariff revision on the 1st of July. He said 55% relief was granted to 3.5 million of the total 6 million consumers in the country.
ජුලි මාසේ පළවෙනිදා සිදුවෙච්ච සංශෝධනයෙන් පසුව 59,95,765ක් පාරිභෝගිකයෝ ඉන්නවා ගෘහස්ත කාණ්ඩේ ඒකක 0.34 භාවිතා කරන පාරිභෝගිකයන් සංඛ්‍යාව 17,44,448ක්. ඒ 0.30 අතර පාවිච්චි කරන 3න් එකක් වන ගෘහස්ත කාණ්ඩේ පිරිස් වෙනුවෙන් ජුලි මාසේ පළවෙනිදා ඉඳලා සමස්ත විදුලි බිලෙන් 65%ක විදුලි බිල අඩු කිරීමක් සිදු කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒකක 31ත් 60ත් අතර පාවිච්චි කරන පාරිභෝගිකයන් සංඛ්‍යාව 18,000ක්. 47%ක විදුලි බිල අඩුවීමක් තියෙනවා. අපේ ඉන්න විදුලි පාරිභෝගිකයන් 60,000න් 35ක් ඉන්නේ කාණ්ඩ දෙක නියෝජනය කරගෙන. 60,000න් 35%කට ආසන්න වශයෙන් 55%ක විදුලි බිල අඩු කිරීමක් ජුලි මාසේ පළවෙනිදා ඉඳලා ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා.
Litro Gas Lanka announced a downward revision to the prices of its domestic gas cylinders with effect from midnight tonight. Chairman of Litro, Mudita Pires, said the price revision reflects price variations in the global market and that further reductions can be expected in future.
The state-run domestic gas supplier Litro Gas Lanka Limited announced that a 12.5 kilogram cylinder will be reduced by 204 rupees to 2,982 rupees with effect from midnight today. The 5 kilogram cylinder will be reduced by 83 rupees to 1,198 rupees, while the 2.3 kilogram cylinder, which is sold at 598 rupees, will be reduced by 37 rupees to 561 rupees from midnight.
මං හිතන්නේ 2021 ඔක්තෝබර් මාසෙට පස්සේ රුපියල් 3000ක මිල සීමාවෙන් පල්ලෙහාට ආපු ප්‍රථම අවස්ථාව මාස 18කට විතර පස්සේ. නැවත වතාවක් අපි ගමන් කරන්නේ මූල්‍ය අර්බුදයට ඉස්සෙල්ලා තිබුණු මිල ගණන් දිහාට. විශේෂයෙන්ම ලෝක වෙළඳ පොලේ මිල පල්ලෙහාට යෑම, ඉහළ යෑම සිද්ධ වෙනවා නිරන්තරයෙන්ම අවුරුද්ද පුරාම. ඉතින් අපි මේ මිල වැඩි වෙන අඩු වෙන පැටර්න් එක යම්කිසි අධ්‍යයනයක් කරලා ඒකට අනුරූපීව ලාංකීය ජනතාවට දෙන්න පුළුවන් මිල අඩු කිරීම දෙන්න පුළුවන් තත්වයකට ලිට්‍රෝ ගෑස් ආයතනය සහ මම සහ මගේ කණ්ඩායම පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ වෙනකොට. ඉතින් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඉදිරියට මේ වගේ සුබ පණිවිඩයක් අපිට පාරිභෝගික ජනතාවට ගෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා ඉවර වෙලා.
Well, Colombo stocks surge as markets reopen after a plan to revamp domestic debt eases concern over the financial sector stability. We'll come back with details on the other side of this break. Just stay with us.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Welcome back to the news. Chinese airline Air China resumed flights to Sri Lanka's Bandaranaike International Airport last night after a hiatus of 18 months. This is the first flight to Colombo since it suspended operations during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Marking the resumption of its operations, Air China's first flight touched the Bandaranaike International Airport at around 8 p.m. last night with 142 passengers on board. The passengers were ceremonially welcomed at the Katunaike Airport. Accordingly, Air China will operate 3 flights a week between Colombo and Chengdu Tianfu International Airport on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Air China Limited is the flag carrier of the People's Republic of China and one of the big three mainland Chinese airlines. According to the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, in 2019, Air China carried 115 million domestic and international passengers via a fleet of 893 aircraft.
Now, Sri Lanka recorded 100,388 tourists during June this year. According to latest statistics of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, this is a 205% increase in the number of tourists compared to June 2022, numbering 32,856. The Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority said 27% of tourists that visited Sri Lanka in June were from India, while the UK followed with the second highest contribution of 8%. Tourist arrivals from Russia and Australia, meanwhile, numbered and amounted to about 8% and 6% of the total number of tourists to Sri Lanka last month. And Sri Lankan stocks surged today as markets reopened following a 4-day holiday after a plan to revamp domestic debt eased concerns over financial sector stability. Colombo stocks jumped 7.17% to a 9-month high, while inflation also cooled sharply. The CSE All-Share Price Index settled 6.71%, up at 10,076.64 in heavy volume. LOLC Finance and LOLC Holdings were the top gainers on the CSE All-Share Price Index, both rising 14.8%. Banking sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the capital goods sector was the second highest contributor. Trading volume on the index rose to 336.6 million shares from 119.9 million in the previous session. The equity market's turnover rose to 7.29 billion rupees from 2.27 billion in the previous session. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 889.2 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 7.03 billion. Now let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Well, global oil prices ticked higher today as markets weighed supply cuts for August by top exporters Saudi Arabia and Russia against a weak global economic outlook. The decision by Saudi Arabia and Russia is likely to be viewed as a bearish signal for prices, as it confirms that optimistic views on demand growth are faltering.
Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest crude exporter, yesterday announced that it will extend its voluntary production cut of 1 million barrels per day for July into August, and flagged that the reduction could continue for further months. Shortly after the announcement, Russia and Algeria volunteered to lower their output and export levels for August by 500,000 and 20,000 barrels per day respectively. Taken together, the Saudi and Russian moves mean that the total output cuts pledged by the members of the OPEC Plus producer group are 5.16 million barrels per day, or about 5% of daily global demand. Brent crude futures were up by 1.7% to $75.93 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude was at $71.05 a barrel, up by 1.8%. However, oil benchmarks settled down about 1% in the previous session, after an initial rally on the back of a gloomy macroeconomic outlook. Business surveys have shown a slump in global factory activity because of sluggish demand in China and Europe, and US manufacturing also fell further in June, reaching levels last seen in the initial wave of COVID-19 pandemic. According to analysts, this broader uncertainty will likely overshadow the OPEC Plus effort to tighten supply.
Now, despite opposition from China and South Korea to Japan's plans to release wastewater from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea, a UN watchdog says the impact on the environment will be negligible. The Fukushima facility is running out of storage space for water which was used to cool nuclear reactors. Pushing findings of a 2-year safety review today, the International Atomic Energy Agency said the water release complies with international standards. In 2011, a tsunami triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake flooded 3 reactors of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. It is regarded as the world's worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Decommissioning of the plant has also started, but the process and the progress could take decades. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, take care. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.